Good morning, everyone. This morning we're going to talk about the life cycle of the tree. We talked about the life cycle a lot when we had Frog and Toad in the garden and when we talked about how a seed grows. And it talked about it in our story this morning, A Tree is a Plant, in our hardback reader. So we're going to talk a little bit about the life cycle of a tree, but first I want to talk about the seasons. Do you guys remember the seasons? Spring, summer, fall, and winter? Well, our tree looks different at each stage of the season. So, we are going to look at how the tree looks at each part of a different season. Because it doesn't always look the same, does it? So in the spring, it had all these little flowers and the buds when it's preparing to get the leaves on for summer. Do you remember what these were called from our story? These are the apple blossoms, and they only last a few days. So they grow and they come on and then they fall off pretty quickly, and then the leaves will come on in summer. So the leaves come on in summer, and you'll start to see some of these little green apples. They're not ready to eat yet, but those are going to grow into our big apples that we eat in the fall. So then come fall, and our leaves start to fall off, just like they do on every tree when they change colors before they fall. We'll have our big red apples. They'll be ripe, and they'll be ready to eat. So then in the winter, after the leaves fall off, the tree is just bare. That means there's nothing on it. All the leaves are gone, and the apples are gone. And then in the spring, the apple blossoms will come again, and then when they fall off, in the summer it'll look like this, and then in the fall, and then in the winter. So every season the tree will look like this during each part of the season. That part of the life cycle of the sequence doesn't change. Every spring it'll have the apple blossoms. Every summer it'll get the leaves and the little tiny apples that are growing. In the fall, it'll get its apples, and then the leaves will start to change. And then in the winter, the tree is bare. So this is what the tree will look like at each stage of the season. But it's not going to do that the first time as soon as it sprouts up, will it? It won't get all the leaves and the apple blossoms and everything, will it? It's got to grow into a big tree first before it can get these things. But once it does that, it's always going to look like this during each season. So our story said that when a seed is planted, it doesn't always mean that a person had to plant it, do they? Sometimes it can be that a seed happened to have fell in the ground and it got those things that it needs and it could grow. Well, what are some of those things that every plant or every tree has to have to grow? Do you remember? We had water, we had sunlight, it needs air, and it needs space. So that way, when it gets bigger, it has plenty of room to thrive and to live. So it's got to have space, too, because those roots go down and get bigger, bigger, bigger. But if there's not room, it won't get enough water because it can't pull that water in if there's not enough space. So let's look at the life cycle of the tree. We have the seed first, which we might plant the seed, or the seed might be in an apple that fell on the ground and then it rotted and then went back into the ground so then it could grow. So either way, it starts with the seed. After the seed gets some of those nutrients, the sun and the water that it needs, we're going to have a sprout. And you can see where it's come up out and it's sprouted and has the little tiny roots. We saw this when we planted our bean seeds, didn't we? Even though our bean seeds were a little bit different because they were in a plastic bag, this is still the same concept, and you guys remember how that looked. Then we're going to come down and we're going to have a seedling, which means it's gotten a little bit bigger. It's like a sprout, just a little taller. So it's a little bit taller and the roots have gone down a little more. Do you guys remember what what purpose they serve? The book tells you, and we talked about it in Frog and Toad with the garden. The roots hold the plant or the tree in place, and they anchor it or root it to the ground, and those roots pull in that water for the tree or for the plant. So those roots have to get bigger as the plant or as the tree gets bigger. So then we come down here after the seedling, and after years, the tree has gotten bigger, more like this. So we have the tree, and look how big those roots have gotten. Because they have to be big enough to take care of this tree and get enough water for it, and they've got to be big enough to hold this big tree into the ground. So we have the tree, and then we have the flowers that come on in the spring, only in the spring, and then in the fall, the tree looks to be fully grown, and the tree has the fruit. Now we'll only get the fruit in the fall. Remember, it's by seasons. So then after this, we have the fruit with the seeds, and we can eat the fruit once it's ripe and ready to eat. So the cycle is always going to be the same. It'll go seed, sprout, seedling, tree, and then it'll get the flowers and then the apples based off the season. But that all takes time. It's not going to sprout and be a seedling and then a tree in a week. Probably not even in a month. It might take years for it to be a tree that looks like this, and especially like this. So it all takes time. But that process is always going to be the same for how the tree grows. But once it's to this point, it's just going to keep getting bigger. The whole time that that tree's alive, it's going to grow. And then that whole time that that tree's alive, in the spring, it'll get the apple blossoms. In the summer, it'll get the leaves. In the fall, the leaves will die, and just because the leaves die doesn't mean the tree dies. So the leaves will die, and they'll change color and fall off, and then the apples will be ready to eat, and they'll come off. And then in the winter, it'll be bare. So once the tree is a big tree like this one, this cycle isn't going to keep going for this tree, but the cycle of the seasons for the apple blossoms, the leaves, the apples, and then the tree being bare, that will continue. As long as that tree's alive, it'll keep growing. And then for new trees, it's always going to start with a seed and go sprout, seedling, tree, and then it'll get its apple blossoms and apples. So it'll always follow that pattern or that sequence. Life cycle is just like a sequence. It's the order of how something happens. So it's the order of how the tree grows and lives. I think there is an activity of the life cycle of the tree. It should be on, I guess it'd be on live grades. So you guys want to check that out and do that on your own. That would be awesome, so you guys can get some more practice with doing the life cycle. Thanks for watching, guys. Keep those hands washed and stay healthy. Bye.